We are live. Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. It's Monday. I had to think back because last week Mel and I went live on Wednesday night and she's like, happy Friday. And I was so excited. And then she went, wait, no, not Friday. It's Wednesday. I'm like, but anyway, happy Monday to all of you who are joining in now. And if you're watching this later on, happy whatever day of the week it is. I'm excited for tonight's show. I'm Rachelle DuBois. I'm all those things listed, and we'll be talking about my most recent book here, but not to spend too much time on me. Going to introduce who is here with me right now, which is my friend Jillian. And Jillian, thanks for joining. And would you let everybody know a little bit about who you are, what you do, because you do all the things.
Hi, I'm Jillian, and I am an educator, second grade educator for about 18 more days in Clearwater, Florida. Also an author and illustrator, self-publisher, written some children's books, and I love to help other people tell their stories. So I'm kind of getting into the, telling people how to spark their story, so to speak. But yeah, glad to be here. I love co-authoring and just joining everybody for, right. We're just together, just sharing our hearts. So that's what makes it so fun.
And I love the part that you say about like the sharing the stories, because that's why I like writing, and I like having the guest blogs and just getting other people's stories out there, because sometimes people are kind of hesitant and they think they don't necessarily have a story. So it just takes like that one, like you just start, share your story.
That's how I started with you. By the way, I reached out to you and filled out the Google form to guest blog, and it took off from there. That was like 2 years ago.
I know, and I'm so thankful for that. And I will be dropping the link later, because for anybody who's thinking about blogging, would love to have your guest blog. So we have Jillian here, and next going to bring up Andrew, who's in his car.
Once again, yes, doing the dad thing, and playing taxi service to my kiddos.
So for anybody who hasn't seen you and doesn't know how often I call on you to co-host, or that you join in, because you're so great about that, let us know a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, in my 9 to 5, I work in Nebraska as a digital learning coordinator statewide for our service agencies here. I've had the good fortune in the last few years to be speaker consultant on personalized learning. And I don't even know if we've even talked about this. I finally got to a point where my book is finished, my first one. So I know it, hopefully the next couple of months will be out. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Congratulations. I wish I had, if I were Mel, I would have confetti to throw, or I'd have like a high five sign. So I'm just going to give you the high five.
I'm just like more of a thank goodness. But
it's a great feeling. That's an awesome accomplishment. So congratulations to that. And finally, joining us today, we have Deb, Dr. Deb. I'm going to call you Dr. Deb, because Mel always calls me Dr. Rachelle. So welcome, Dr. Deb. Could you tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do?
Sure. I've been teaching business and computer science for the last 20 plus years across K through 12, with a little stint into, I taught a master's level course in marketing, and I realized, K-12 is my gig. So I stay there. I'm also on the Northeast Regional Board of PAECT, which is our Pennsylvania ISTE affiliate. So that's a fun thing to do. And Rachelle, I'm actually writing my first book. I started it last summer, and I was going to do a collaboration. It's all about, what I'm passionate about in my practice. And I was going to collaborate, and I started going through, and I have 15 topics. So I don't think I need to collaborate. So I'm excited about that project.
Oh, well, I'm throwing the confetti for you and giving you the high five. Congratulations. It's awesome. Once you do start, like, it does become easier, but it is a big process, especially when you have a lot to take on, whether you're doing it on your own, or you decide that it's a great idea to pull in, like 30 or 40 or 50 educators into one space and try and make it fit. So for anybody who is joining us right now, and if you're like, what are these people talking about? Illustrating my most recent book, my newest book, Things I Wish, ... Oh, I love that. New, which has lots of different stories. And it has, including myself, 50 educators from around the world different roles in education, different experiences in education. Some have gone through and been classroom teachers, administrators, coaches, consultants, you name it, they've had all the roles. But the idea for the book came about, honestly, at this point, I can't even remember where necessarily, but I know that I had a list, and that's the truth. I had a running list of just stories of things, just going back in my memory of all the years of teaching, because I've been teaching for a while, and we've had, in all of our experiences, great things that have happened, challenging things that have happened, everything that has been in between. And sometimes you forget about like a certain, I don't know, a day in class where it was like the best lesson you ever taught, or how many times you've said, I wish I knew that. I know every day I feel like I'm saying like, that would have been helpful like 3 days ago, or I wish I knew that when I started teaching. So I looked at the list, started to write it, and it was going to be a book about things I wish I knew when I started teaching. But when I reached out to people in my network and I put posts on Twitter and I just asked, how would you complete this prompt? I got so many amazing stories in there. And then I thought, well, I'll make 2 books. And that wasn't happening. So I fit it into one, and it has anything ranging from things I wish I knew when I started teaching, things I wish administrators knew, parents knew, students knew, members of the community knew about education. And it's for anybody. So even if you're not in education, you could pick up the book. And I really do see applicability to any line of work that you do, because if you work in an office, you have to build relationships, and you have to take risks, and you have to learn to collaborate and have a mentor, and all of those things and many more that are talked about in this book. So even, I don't want to say like, I highly recommend this book, because obviously I'm going to say that. But with things like teacher appreciation coming up, with summertime coming up, if you're looking for a book, it's an easy read that you can pick up and start anywhere you want and helps you to think and reflect on it. I would recommend picking up this book, not because it's just my story, but because of all of the other stories that are in it. Which brings me to my first question and my time to pause, the importance of our stories. And so, Jillian, I'm going to start with you on this, only because you mentioned in yours, like, telling the story. So what can you share? Like, why is it important? Or if you want to even talk about, the stories that you shared in this book, or maybe something you're thinking about now of like why people should like write a blog or do a podcast and share their story.
I appreciate the fact that, there are people like you, Rachelle, that take a chance, right, on people like us, because people like us don't or normally have that bravery and that courage until somebody believes in us and somebody says, hey, I know you can do this. Like I said, it wasn't until I reached out to you one time and just said, hey, I filled out the Google form and said, oh my goodness, I would love to guest blog for you. And I will never forget that feeling, because I was too scared to do it on my own. I did not have the courage. I did not feel like my voice was worthy enough. So I think just the importance of our voice is, we talk to our students about giving them voice and choice. Well, we need to have that voice and choice too. So in your book, I actually do have 2 stories, and one is about my son. And I've talked about that one before, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the other one. And it's about that one student, right, that you really just sticks with you forever. And this student was my student, Taylor. It was from 20 years ago. And she was just that one student who was very shy, but very, very bright, very talented. And I knew she loved art and music and, but she was one of those who just socially did not really fit in and didn't feel like anybody believed in her. And, it just took that relationship and building that platform with her. And it was as simple as, just giving her attention and just praising her for the things that she was doing. And she would go on and help other students. And she, and as we grew together, we were together for 2 years because I looped up with her class. It was 3rd grade and 4th grade. But we today, 21 years later, still have a friendship. She gave me, I'll never forget, every Christmas, I text her a picture because she gave me a little handmade Christmas ornament that I've not broken, and I have kept it all these years. And when I put it on my tree, I take a quick picture and I send it to her. And I'm like, Taylor, this is never going to leave my tree. And about a year ago, she had painted. She knew that I was all about joy, and I love talking about joy and sparking joy in other people. And she made me a hand-painted, I should have brought them in, hand-painted pair of Vans that had sunflowers on them. And on the back, it says imparted joy. And she left them on my doorstep one day. I knew it was her because she had started her own little business doing that. But, just things like that, when you can make an impact on a student, that's important. When you can just build that relationship, and we talk about how important relationships are, but y'all, things like that, it doesn't take a whole lot to invest, to believe, to just make the time, not take the time, but make the time to make those relationships important.
Yeah. And that is a thing I wish I knew a long time ago. And even, 5 years ago, I'm probably a little bit longer than that. Like I wasn't as connected on Twitter and different social media spaces. Like I didn't know. And for teachers and students, I mean, we've all heard like, don't smile until like Thanksgiving or the holidays or whatever it is. And don't share your personal information and everything. And I actually saw a tweet that somebody shared, I think last night, that it said, educators, your job is not to like share your lives and experiences and build relationships with students. And I was like, wait, what? And there was, of course, this long thread, lots of threads of people responding to that because of what a difference it makes. And I know my own experience over, I'd say probably the last 10 years, I've really been able to form some relationships with some students who now are like juniors and seniors in high school. But I mean, even beyond that, I mean, some of them, I'm not going to say what the ages are because that'll clue into exactly how long I've been teaching, but it does make a difference. And I didn't know that and how much that matters, not just for the short term, but for the long term, like you shared too. So yeah, I love the stories that you share in the book, both the one that's, I mean, they're both personal, but the one that's very personal to you, your family, and then the one, of course, about Taylor. So thank you for sharing that. And who are we going to go to next? Andrew or Deb? It doesn't have to be about the importance. I mean, you can share, what your story was, something you wish other teachers, educators knew as well.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, build off of that point and then maybe get to the story. As you were talking, I couldn't help but think, the reason I'm in education today is from my dad and my grandfather, who I'm named after, and they were both teacher coaches. And I, for the longest time, growing up, would just be approached by people who were complete strangers to me who would tell me their story of how they knew my grandpa or how they knew my dad, and what they had meant to them. And from the time, as little as I can remember, I just knew that the work that we do is important, and that our stories, that we foster in those moments are critical in the lives of the students we serve, but also like have a place outside of the classroom walls as well. And so I just, I've always loved that. I've always believed in that. And I don't know, to kind of pivot a little bit, I guess, to the story I had the opportunity to share as part of this collective work. And again, Rachelle, as always, thanks for always making space for us to have these kind of conversations and get these kind of stories out. But my mentor teacher from when I was a first year teacher, and he continued to be a mentor for me for years after that, but that was formally the time we were assigned, was just phenomenal. Best teacher I've ever had the opportunity to go and observe. And he did things in a way that was incredibly different from what I would say my strengths or natural tendencies to sort of incorporate in my own lesson design. The bell would ring and no one would say a word, and he would just patiently gather his things and then walk to a chair and nestle in and just hold court for a time. But there was such wisdom in his practices and what he had to say that the students just hung on his every word. And I think it is imperative that we tell our stories and try to capture our stories too. In some way, shape, or form, particularly now with, there's been some turnover in the profession, and I think there's a lot of institutional knowledge that is, even if it's not being lost from education, it's gone from the classroom now into administration, or it's gone from the classroom into a different capacity somewhere else. And so the more we can make sure that those that are going to be picking up that and carrying that torch behind us, I guess, have access to what we were able to have access to from those veteran teachers like Greg Welch, who I wrote about, I think is also a big part of sharing your story and what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the mentoring piece and the connecting piece, for me, I had teachers in high school that they were there, like you could talk to. But when I got my job where I've been teaching now since the last century, it was so different because it was such a smaller school. And so you had teachers and students were more like, they were more interacting more. And I wasn't used to that experience. And so the relationships that I could see that were already set was so different to me because I wasn't used to that from my own experience. I mean, I graduated with 600 people. And so, I mean, not that we had huge class sizes, but there were a lot of students. And so that, I was teaching the way I've been taught and interacting like, nope, we can't, don't ask me what I did on the weekend. And I'm not going to ask for help or anything. And so what a difference it has made just going through law school while teaching and having the role of a student and having a mentor and then seeing like, oh my gosh, like I need to be doing this in my classroom, and what a difference it makes for not just me, but for the students too, because how we interact with them and the model that we set for them. So I always love hearing your stories. I'm always thankful to have you join in too from wherever you are, I will say. So thank you for that. And how about you, Deb? Oh, wait, you're muted.
I have to unmute, yes. Okay. We're talking about story, and it's interesting because I've been learning about using story as a way to heal spiritually and emotionally. And it's just real interesting, all the cross connection between all the wonderful things story does. And I think it's important that people not be afraid. Rachelle was there the first time I presented at Easton, and it was like a big deal for me going to an international conference. And I just decided there is no more comfort zone, and I'm just gonna do. And I went there and I presented, and not only was it turned out to be a learning experience for me. So I actually learned while I was presenting, but no one's judging, and if you have something to share, it's important that you do. And I'll tell you another example I have of that. When I was finishing my doctoral work, the Wilkes University where I went, they require you to publish. And they said, if you have knowledge and you don't share it, you're stealing from the educational community. And that's an interesting way to put it. So if you have something, I don't care how small it is, put it out there, share it, because you could help someone. So I wrote about project-based learning, and I wanted to say too, this book, like reading through this book, I see relationship. It seems to be one of the biggest themes. And that's why I started big into project-based learning, because I realized I wasn't connecting with my students. We had gone from block scheduling. So I had 3 classes, about 60 to 75 students at a time. So then they changed. So now I was teaching 5 sections a day and had about 125, 130 students and about 40% special needs. So I wasn't getting any connection time with my kids. And so I started building a little bit at a time, little bit. And by the time I left secondary and went to elementary, I wasn't testing at all, because I realized it was a waste of my class time. I only had them for 45 days, 90 days. And so instead of spending time reviewing and testing, I did everything project-based. And that took me away from the front of the classroom, lecturing all the time. And it switched to student-centered. And because they were working on separate projects that help with differentiation, right? Because I could differentiate for each child individually in the project, and it freed me up to be able to circulate and connect and find out what was going on with them. So I found it to be a win-win-win. And if I ever do go back to secondary, that's how I'm going to work. Just project-based. Show me what you know.
Yeah. And that's another, I wish I knew I wasn't doing project-based learning for the first 8 years of my teaching career. I talked about this on with Jeff Bradbury last week. I think we were recording a podcast, and I think we were talking about just got into like PBL and things that you're wrong about. And I said, yeah, somebody had written had asked me to write a blog. Well, first I said, are you doing projects? I'm like, yeah, of course I'm doing projects. And I might be wrong. It might not have been Jeff, because I had a couple conversations last week. So it was either Jeff or it was at the PACT event on Saturday that was for pre-service and other teachers that they did that. I want to say lead and learn, but I might be off on the title. But I said, yeah, like, doesn't everybody do projects? And so I wrote this blog about project-based learning, but it really wasn't. It was about learning based on projects. And it wasn't until I read the book Launch by AJ Giuliani and talked with Don Wettrick, the author of Pure Genius, and just like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing PBL. And then I set that in motion, because I didn't have quite the load of students and numbers that you did, but I was teaching a group of Spanish levels 3, 4, and 5 in one course. There were 17 of them running on different schedules, and it was like a mess. And so that's when I dove into it, not knowing that much other than like, this is what it is, this is what it isn't, and then learning with them. But what a difference that made for me and for them to have these like really authentic, meaningful opportunities, and they were leading in the classroom. So it's definitely a great way to go, but it can be scary because it feels like you have to know so much about it, but you don't. You just have to know enough to get started and dive in and see how it goes. And it might go like awesome, and it might be like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? But we're all learning as we go. So I love that you shared that, because like reading all of yours, I'm like, yep, totally wish I knew that one. There's another thing. I wish I had this book all those years ago, which is kind of the point. And so as we start to wrap up, I want to ask you either one of two things. Either what is something that you wish that others knew about education, or, and I'll actually put this one on the screen. This is for anybody joining in too. So it's almost May. I was going to almost do it's going to be May. Okay, yeah, except, but I'm not going to do it. But it's almost May. And if somebody's watching this, hello, you're in May. End of the year, we have graduations. We have teachers who are doing student teaching. They're finishing up, ready to graduate, the pre-service teachers. And what advice, or it might be somebody who is just coming into education for the first time. And is there any advice that you would offer to them aside from what we've already talked about? Like, what's one thing or two things that you might say?
I think I would say get out of your own way, because learning is a progression, and learning is always evolving. And even though I know you were talking about PBLs, like we do them all the time, and they're different for each child, and that's the beauty of it. Allow each child to learn the way that they need to learn. Let them find their own style. Let them be their own creative person. Let them have their own voice. But just, let them be.
I love that. And I put that on the screen, and I hope I didn't type anything wrong. But you're right. And that's something I wish I knew. Like, get out of my way, get out of the way, period. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Andrew or Deb?
I got two. One, one thing I learned is that control is an illusion. And when I first started teaching, I thought I had to be in control, but you really never are. And children are kind. So for the most part, they are. And if you mess up, they're okay. I used to give them extra credit points for finding typos I said, there's a typo in everything somewhere. And if you can find it, so, have fun with the kids.
I like that one. I have students that used to put tally marks on the board. They're like, you made a mistake. I go, if you stick around long enough, you're going to find like 4,000 just today. And they would write little tally marks. But when they weren't looking, I'd go and I erase a couple. It's okay. They didn't know. I did admit to it though. So that is true. We don't have to be the ones in control. We feel like we do because that's the way things were always done, but it's okay. And owning those mistakes too was a great lesson for students, because they get over that. Like, well, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to fail. So great advice. And Andrew, we'll leave it to you to
bring it home.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll actually continue to build off of that story from the book and say that I think it's really important to spend a little bit of time getting out of your classroom and going observing your peers in your building. And no one ever has the time for that. There's a million reasons not to. And at the same time, there's a million reasons that you should. I feel like it wasn't until then that I started to see the practices that I wasn't even aware were possible that could be integrated into what I was doing. And I think teaching is an art, and you're going to have your influences out there, and you won't know until you see it sometimes. And then What's fun about that, though, is that allows you to connect and respect on a deeper level your peers. And so it's great for, peer, like colleague to colleague culture. And then as you integrate those best practices that you've seen, I mean, you're emulating them because they were really effective somewhere else. And that is part of your own learning journey, but it's going to help your classroom and your ability to connect with your kiddos as well. So there's a lot of benefit to that if we take the time to invest in it.
Yeah, and I don't know if I captured all of what you said because there was a lot there really well, but it is an art. I will say it definitely is an art. So anybody else has advice for if you're watching now or later, because the comments keep on coming in and we would love to hear from you and connect with all of you who are there and to connect with the authors here who have contributed and have written or in the process of writing their own books. So soon we'll be seeing some of those. Hey, and we have a special guest. Love it. No, but thank the three of you for joining in. And as promised, I'm dropping the link on the bottom. So if you want or are interested in blogging and thinking, I don't know what I'm going to write about, what are you doing in your classroom? What is something you're excited about right now? What is frustrating to you? What's a challenge you've had? What's an idea for the end of the year? Anything, just send it my way. Would love to have your guest blog. And check out the book, grab some copies, bulk available on EduMatch. Great teacher appreciation gift for the week, but just because of the stories that are in it. So again, thank you to the three of you for joining in today. And for anybody else, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with some more contributors to the book. So until then, well, we'll be back on Friday. Mel and I will be on Friday. But other than that, we'll catch up with everybody else here another time. So have a great rest of your night. And we'll see you.
Thanks, Rachelle.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.